Hi, friends. You're listening to Life Take Two, the podcast for anyone who's ever had to start over and then decided they wanted to maybe change the world a little bit along the way. I'm Jenny Gage, writer, grandma, mom, podcaster, survivor, and your internet big sister. This show is a place for survivors, seekers, rebuilders, movers, and shakers. Like our battle cry recently is just Viva la Revolution. And I know I don't ever pronounce that correctly in French because I'm American. Anyway, this is a space for anyone who's ever whispered, well, this wasn't the plan. Now what? As you know, each week we talk to someone who's lived through a major life transition and woken up. Divorce, loss, religious deconstruction, addiction recovery, career pivots, gender identity, retirement, spiritual awakening, you name it. Those are the people that I showcase here. Because life isn't a straight line. Sometimes we jump off the mainstream path on purpose, and sometimes we get knocked off course, maybe even get pushed off by someone or something. And when that happens, we get a life take two. I, of course, found myself in the second act of my life, and here we are. Now, today, I'm really excited about my guest, John. John is a good guy, and as you, my friends, know, it's sometimes hard to find these good guys. I want to tell you where I first saw John. I had been on TikTok just scrolling one afternoon and was feeling just a little bit discouraged about some of the topics that I saw. I don't know why my algorithm is making me hate watch MAGA stuff right now, and some of the things that really just hurt my guts. And so I'm scrolling through TikTok, getting depressed, thinking the sky is falling like Chicken Little. And then I pop into this live stream. And this is the first time I saw good guy John here, work from home John. And John, you gave me hope with your passion and your purpose. And I thought, all is not lost. Like, John is out there. So that's what I know of you. I know that you are a husband and a dad and a man who is a little bit off the beaten path of what the patriarchy has defined men as. And you pop over there on TikTok and you go head to head with other men telling them there's a better way to live. And that's what I know of you. Can you introduce yourself to my subscribers?
Yeah, certainly. And I can try to give the elevator pitch of what my take two is or are. I feel like I've got at least two. But yeah, I'm John. Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. This is like super exciting for me. It's actually so funny, Jenny, to hear you say how you came across me and even phrases like, like how we are dealing with the patriarchy, because like I don't consider myself somebody that like deals with that, but I guess what I'm talking about does directly deal with that. I never frame it like that, but it's super exciting to try and make a difference. But for my background, I was in a divorced family growing up. My mom and dad split. I have a career take two. Like I went to school, Jenny, I don't think I've told you this before, but I went to school for 6 years, an undergrad and a master's degree in tuba performance, classical tuba performance. Craziest thing,
Never
right?
met a tuba graduate.
Yeah, right.
What?
So I have a master's degree from Indiana University in tuba performance. I managed restaurants for a few years after I did not win the orchestra job in the sky. And then I got a software degree, which led me to my current software company. So there's a career take two in there. And then maybe more important for this conversation, I met my ex-wife during my undergrad, and due to, maybe we'll get into like the nitty gritty, but due to some, everyone makes mistakes, right? But like she did something that, is like hurtful to anybody, to lots of people, to men. So there was a take two after a divorce there, right? And I met my now and forever beautiful wife a little while after my divorce from my ex-wife. We now have a beautiful 5-year-old together. And where I'm at now and how Jenny came across me is this take two, like my own relationship and the way that I think about like relationship dynamics and what it means to be a man or a parent or a partner, as well as this entrepreneurial side to me. It's like, if I can make a difference to my family and maybe better support them by making a difference to dozens or hundreds or thousands of families by having this important conversation, that's why I'm online talking about this. So even if I don't break the bank and get into the green, if I can come online and have a conversation with one hard-headed person or man, and hopefully their family can be better off because of it, that's kind of how you found me. That's what I'm doing now.
Your TikTok live, the first one that I saw, gave me goosebumps and made me cry. And I'm not just saying that like rhetorically. I literally had tears in my eyes. I immediately shared it with my 400,000 TikTok followers. And I was
You did,
texting
yeah.
it to some of my girlfriends too. And I've been sharing your stuff on my platforms because I think that as a woman, there are a lot of other women out here in the trenches with this, trying to make sure that we have our rights, that we have body autonomy, that we have access to supporting ourselves, all those things that I didn't have in my first active life, right?
Yep.
And we expect that there's going to be women on our team, but when we see a man who's doing those things that we're working so hard to do, I think that I always appreciate that. It's important. So before we get into, I have to ask a question so that everybody gets this answered. Before we move on to the actual meat and potatoes, I just can't get this out of my head. What would that like tuba dream have been? Like, what is that? Like playing for the Dallas Cowboys or something? Like why you major in that? I can't let that go. We can't move on until you get to that question for me.
Yeah, if only it was as exciting as the Dallas Cowboys, right? I think only the Ohio State college marching band has like a really cool tuba position, not any of the football teams. Technically a dying industry, as sad as that is, but there's a bunch of professional orchestras. There's probably 30 or 40 in the States that pay a decent living wage. And then you gig, like you teach at universities, you try to keep classical music alive. The only other path is you can go into the military, right? They've got like ceremonial bands. And then the really nice ones are there's 4 or 5 in DC and one at West Point, where you're basically guaranteed to not be deployed and you perform for people like the president and international guests. So the dream was one of those. And I made it to the finals like 3 times, but I didn't win. And then I had bills to pay. Like college time was over. So the dream was either make minimum wage and practice tuba in my off hours or get a real job because I wanted to succeed and provide for my family. So
That's so fascinating. Okay, thank you. Because like I'm like, why would you major in tuba? And like, what is the end game there? But
yeah, I
that
mean,
sounds
I
actually
truly didn't
really
know the end game. I
cool.
was just good at it in high school, and somebody was like, "Hey, you can do this," and I thought I was this cool tuba guy. Right? As much of an oxymoron as that is, I thought I was the cool tuba guy.
I think that's what we're gonna love about you. In fact, I want to change the thumbnail to the cool tuba guy instead of John the good guy because I love that. I almost
Yep.
had to play the tuba in high school because I decided I wanted to be in the band, but my parents were super poor, so I didn't have the money to buy an instrument. And so one of my uncles had a tuba, somebody had a trombone, and then somebody had a clarinet. I wanted to play the
Mhm.
flute, but nobody had those. So I could have been a tuba person. I was all of like 4'11" and like 80 pounds. So I didn't have the best instrument for me. Okay,
Yeah.
John, I have some questions for you. And I didn't give you these in advance. I just want to hear from you, having binge watched everything on your platform. And by the way, please, guys, go over to John's TikTok, catch some of his live streams, and just see this man who's trying to change the world and make it a better place. See what he's all about. By the way, I loved when you finally showed your wife because I'm watching all these videos and it's like, where is the wife? Like, who is this woman that her husband's like, wash the dishes, even if you
Yep.
have a job? Okay, so I have a question for you. The first question here is, what does the word feminism mean to you?
Yeah. I'll say what it means to me, and then I'd be willing to have a conversation with you or anybody else about what I get wrong. And I bet my definition of it is going to be less right than what my actions are because I just don't know like what the dictionary says, right?
Appreciate you saying
Okay.
that, not to interrupt
Yeah.
that. I appreciate you saying that, John. And I don't want you to give me like the dictionary definition or even what you think that we ladies think feminism is. I truly just want to hear through a male lens, what does feminism mean to you? And ladies, an invitation in the comment section. Drop your comments what you thought John got right or wrong, and maybe what you think that he should know about how we view feminism. But yeah, I don't want our answer. I don't want the dictionary answer. I want from you.
No, it's fair. It's not a test, right? It's not a quiz.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, like, and this is why I talk about what I talk about. We are all human, right? There are certainly differences about us that we, to some extent, can or can't control. But feminism, to me, is a desire for women to be equal humans to men, no matter how different something about them is, either about an individual because of their environment or how they were raised, right? Or something that is innate to them. Like obviously I can't give birth, right? So if there's something about many women where they can give birth and I can't, that's inherently different. I don't think that makes them any less equal or more equal, right? Like they're just equal. We're humans and it's 2025. any way that I want to be able to do something or pain that I experience or whatever, so is my wife. Like, she's just another person who happens to be the person that gave birth and doesn't make the money in our relationship. But that doesn't mean that she's any lesser or more than, right? Like, we are equal partners. And I think that feminism is a desire to not be seen as either less than or only be seen as an entire half of the population, as people who need to do specific things. Even if many of them do that specific thing, like give birth or stay home while the man works or whatever, I think it's just a desire not to be told, hey, because you've got two X chromosomes, you need to go do this thing. Right? Like, it's 2025. We're smarter than that now. I think feminism is trying to recognize we're smarter than that. That's not the way it needs to be.
I love that. So I'm hearing just a lot of equality. And I think that the word that I would add to that, if I was giving my definition, would be equality of opportunity. So yes, certainly I have a womb. I've given birth. Actually, I don't have a womb anymore. I think you hysterectomy. But I've born 4 children. So, that's a structural thing. That's a nuts and bolts and parts type of thing. But that opportunity with that equality is, I think, what feminism is for me. I shouldn't be told that just because I am a wife and a mom that I can't run a business, or I can't be a firefighter, or I can't write books. Like, some of my favorite authors, the Bronte sisters, had to write under a man's name because they were literally told just 200 years ago that they couldn't write books because of their parts, because they're nuts and
Yep.
bolts. So that equality of opportunity. And I love your answer. That's absolutely beautiful. So something that I think about a lot, and that I know that my followers will resonate with, is that the dirty truth of all of this is that white men like you have opposed feminist movements with the same intensity with which they opposed civil rights movements. The fact that there are slurs around women still today in the year 2025, like single cat lady, woke feminist. I get that a lot. People call me woke feminist more than probably anything else. Women's libber was a phrase that, like, my parents' generation used. Karen, all of these slurs against women says a lot. Like, when JD Vance gets up there and says, single childless cat ladies, like, that's this horrible thing. It's received in a similar way as a woman to what people would have received any type of slur.
Yep.
Black Americans during the civil rights movement, some of our indigenous population, as they were being, told you have to go live on these reservations. And the white men have opposed women with that same amount of passion. They oppose feminism for the same reason they oppose civil rights too. And the reason is that it threatens their hierarchy, their place at the top. White men in America have had a place at the top of government, at the top of corporations, at the top of the army, unions, at the top of their homes. That's my castle. The man god apparently said in Christian mythology that the man was the head of the home and the head of the wife, and the woman in Christian mythology is taken out of his rib. So she doesn't even have her own, like, God makes man, but then he's just like, I'm just gonna yank this guy's rib and put
Yep.
some legs on it. Here's the tricky thing for us women, is that we're seen as grappling for that place at the top, and men are afraid that that's going to displace them. So we women have gone through all of these cycles of the suffrage movement and women's liberation. In World War II, we got rid of all of the men, and then we stepped into jobs, and my own grandmother stepped into jobs in the shipyards in the 1940s, which were very satisfying for her and which would change her future forever, as she was able to support her son by herself. And we women are so ahead of the game, but the men at the top are still trying to push us back.
Yep.
And I think that that's so frustrating. Why do you think, as you were interacting with the public on your TikTok lives, and I see some of the men like coming after you? Let me give just an example for my subscribers, and please go watch John. You'll just say literally a simple statement, like, even if you're working 50 hours a week, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't wash your own dishes and do your own laundry when you come home. Even if your wife likes doing that, that's your job. And guys in comment sections freak out because they think that women are competing for that place at the top, and white men oppose every movement that displaces their hierarchy. Why do you think the men are so opposed to feminism and to a guy like you?
Yeah. I think like the three words that come to mind are, and they're kind of all dealing with the same thing: selfishness, selfishness. Yeah, selfishness, greed, and fear. And I think it's different, like the specific thing that somebody's worried about, or like every example that we could talk about. And we're talking about like the presidency versus like a husband and a wife after the 9 to 5 job, then the thing that they might be selfish about or scared about or whatever is a different thing. But ultimately, I think those are the feelings. So I think that and I say this to the men that come in live and when they throw out an expletive or something, what I normally say is, are you unable to think critically about this, or are you just choosing to not think critically about this? And I'd like to think in 2025 that most able-bodied people that have a smartphone or scrolling through TikTok live are intelligent enough to think about this, and they're just making a bad choice to come in and not think critically about this. But when I think critically about it, right, something I talked about this morning actually on live was, of course, like I am trying to survive, like whether you believe certain things or not, like let's call me an animal. So it feels good to be comforted and to not have to like risk my life to survive, right? I don't have to go out there and hunt. I don't have to slave away in the sun or whatever to survive. Does it feel good to come home at 5 and take a shower, kick up my feet, drink a beer, play Call of Duty? Would all that like feel good in the moment? Sure. And I think that too many men, right, if we're talking about this problem that we're on this podcast about, too many men are holding on to that and don't want to let that go. Like they're scared to sacrifice their short-term happiness or whatever to let that go. And I think that they're not thinking critically that both themselves and their family will be better off if they give that little bit extra and do different things and kind of prioritize different things. So they're not thinking critically about that medium to long-term payoff, giving up that short-term like thing that they're holding onto so tight.
John, you just kind of blew my mind. It's really interesting to hear from your perspective. So it just feels good to be taken care of. And from the presidency to like, a CEO who has a wife at home, and data shows that some of the most successful men have partners. Like it's really difficult to become a president or a CEO, head of any financial institution or whatever, unless you have that wife at home who basically acts as like your personal assistant, but also your cheerleader and your validator. And if you want to be a daddy, she's going to be home taking care of the kids and stuff. So you're just saying like all those guys, from the president to just the everyday husband in their home, it just feels good. It feels good to come home. I had a little experience with that just the other day. I have been on vacation for a couple days and came home and just had to hit everything really hard, my book and my podcast and everything all at once. And I started working at 4 o'clock in the morning on Monday, and I was still going at 6:30 at night. And I had stuff I was going to cook dinner, but my honey came home from his job and he went into the kitchen, and without telling me, he just made dinner. Now it was grilled cheese, tomato soup, and a salad, but a really good salad. So he wasn't like whipping up like crepes or creme brulee or enchiladas or anything, but it was really good. And as I was sitting there just buried in my editing, he comes over and he's gorgeous and he has this sweet smile on his face, and he sets down dinner in front of me, and I had not eaten for like 18 hours that day. And I was so happy. Like, it's like, oh my God, I can keep editing and I'm eating food that I didn't cook. And then he cleared my dishes and took care of everything that needed to be taken care of while I just finished up my work. And as a woman, I haven't often had that experience, and it felt really good. Like it felt amazing.
Yep. And I think the thing that he did that some of the men that come in and they're combative don't get, right? Like effort is hard. People like you and me, like you put in that 18-hour day and you know that all that effort is worth it, but it's because you are like really intelligent and you're thinking really critically about what that 18 hours of really hard work is going to do. So your husband, right? Like, did it take effort to do everything that he did and then also choose without being asked to cook that meal for somebody else? Yeah. And like effort is sometimes hard and it sucks, but your husband is like thinking critically, loves critically, like has this down, so that the effort didn't bother him. It was an easy choice to make, even if the effort was hard. And that's what I talk about all the time. Like coming home and sacrificing a couple more hours or giving up a weekend day to give your wife off or something. Like, it's not that it's easy. People come in and they say it's easy. And I actually disagree with them. I think the choice is easy, even if the 8-hour weekend day that you give your wife off so she can relax or something is hard. The choice is easy, even if the effort takes energy and sacrifice, you know?
Well, Kevin had worked probably like a 10-hour day too, and he's had a really busy week. So he walked straight in the door from work, saw that I was still going, and immediately got to work doing all the stuff. By the way, just a little correction for my audience. Kevin is my partner, but we are
Oh,
not married. And I despise the word
gotcha.
husband, but you don't know that. So Kevin is
Totally
my
get it.
non-married
Glad
partner.
to
We
learn.
had a commitment ceremony. So he calls me his wife because we had a church wedding. He's Christian. We're married in the eyes of Jesus, but I am an atheist feminist. So I refer to him as my partner. So if we're out and about, then I'll say, this is my partner, Kevin. And he'll say, this is my wife, Jenny. And that's right for both of us. And at some
Yep.
point we may get married. We have a domestic partnership and he's incredible. So yeah, he was tired. And I wonder, like, why does a guy like Kevin, why does he come home and do that? I didn't ask him, but he's not getting pampered. He's not getting the relaxation. What did he get out of making dinner for me, cleaning up the kitchen? He also did my laundry. He took care of everything. He went out and cleaned our back patio. And by the time I was ready to go to bed, he had a movie on and was ready to give me my back scratch and tuck me into bed, literally. But what does he get out of that? What does a guy get out of that? Seems like a lot of
Yeah.
work for nothing.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly a lot of work. Me and Kevin sound a lot alike. I should meet Kevin.
You
But
guys would be friends for sure.
yeah, I mean, I do think one of the most important things is like he knows that you probably feel really loved, right? Like if one of the most important things, if not the most important thing in like the time that he's got on this earth with you is you, and he knows that that's going to like make your day, right? Like July 7th or whatever day that was, if that absolutely made your day, like he changed your life for a day. And if that's something that makes him tick, which I think arguably if you're like deeply in love with somebody should kind of make you tick, then it's easy to make that choice to sacrifice and put in the effort to do that thing. And for what it's worth too, I bet even if that day wasn't 50-50, I bet you guys, whether it's over the course of a week or month or year, like different seasons of life look different. So I don't know exactly how the day looked, but maybe he put in 60% that day to your 40 of the relationship. Who knows what that day looked like? But I bet if you zoom out, there's days where you surprise him with something nice, right? Where you cook dinner for him without being asked. And I don't think that it needs to be transactional, but I think that when partners take care of each other like that, and you're truly in love, and there's no like mental or physical deficits, right? Like a unique situation, then I think that the other partner reciprocates just naturally out of love when the time is right and the season's right.
You said a couple of my favorite words there because I don't believe in transaction ships.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it just in our late stage capitalistic industrialized society, we are pushed into transaction ships.
Yeah.
Um, so it's beautiful to hold that space for a relationship. I love the word reciprocity. So Kevin and I, when we first blended our families together, I had come from a Mormon trad wife background. I did everything.
Yep.
I did all of the cooking, all of the cleaning, and that didn't work out because he was a first year school teacher. He had to relocate across the world to be with me, and we were broke, and I needed to first of all generate some income, and also at 44 years old, I was ready to live my life and not just be at home cooking dinner all the time. So we had a huge negotiation after we blended our lives together. And we've been figuring out along the way that reciprocity. So if I do this and this on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then how are you going to take that baton and do something to help me? And I will say that as I dialogue with men in my platforms and in my life, most men feel this. They feel that the money depositing in the bank account, the work that they're doing in their offices, in their shops, the restaurants, wherever, that money is how they're loving their family. And that's
Yep.
certainly what my first husband, very traditional family, I was the ultimate Mormon trad wifey for 24 years. My first husband would have told me, I have already taken care of you because I've been working all day today. So now it's your turn to cook me dinner and clean the kitchen and take care of the kids and do all of the other stuff. That money for most men is where the love stops. And not to take away from men, because in our society, men are very much exploited for that money. And they're exhausting themselves out there in the world. So they come home and they're like, I've given you everything. I feel like I've been bled dry. And in late stage capitalism, they have, and we have, and we've all been a little bit bled dry. So what you suggest is that those men who are already giving the money as a form of love and that support, providing home, cars, whatever, if their wife isn't working, and that's the situation, that they also come home. No, I don't think it matters if the wife works in this scenario. That they also come home and maybe cook dinner once in a while, take care of
Yep.
the kids, do other stuff.
Yep. Yeah, totally. And you taught me one other phrase that I think I'm allowed to say, edit it out if not, but mommy with benefits. I use that phrase, unfortunately, sometimes in my lives because it
I think
resonates.
I trademarked that. I
Yeah.
came up with moms with benefits, and I say it all the time because, Oedipus Rex. And
No,
I
I think
hate it, but it's accurate.
no, it's totally accurate. It works. And
I
then
was a
another
mom
one
with
you just,
benefits for 24 years, right?
yeah. And then the transaction ship, I think that's gonna stick with me too. I think I'll use that because it makes total sense, right? Some of the men come in the live, and just to echo your point before I give my thought on it, like they will see a prompt on screen, like even if a man pays all the bills, he should still help with the cleaning and kids, right? I think that's one of the things that I have on screen when I talk. People will come in, and the first comment that they will post is, heck no, if she's not doing nothing, she's getting thrown out, right? Like that's a comment that they have put in before. And of
I've
course,
been
my
in your
first,
lives and I've watched these guys, and I'm
yeah,
like,
my
how do I not go in the comments and just say profanity and go to jail?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, my first rebuttal every time is like, that is the person that you supposedly love and said, till death do us part. And you're saying if dinner's not done like one day a week consistently, they're getting thrown out. I mean, that's wild to me. But anyway, context always matters, right? And there's like exceptions to every rule, but broadly, I think that most people could make the choice to give that extra, right? People will come in and they'll say, what if I worked a 10-hour day? I'm sorry to give them a wake up call, especially if they're 30 or 40 years old. But if you work a 10-hour day, are you sleeping 14 hours? Like, go home. And if your stay at home wife parented and cooked and cleaned and tried to keep up with stuff for 10 hours, you're not sleeping for 14 hours. Come home and help. And I think what they don't understand, that I try to get them to understand, it's really infuriating, the ones that have kids and they still don't get it after years, is if you worked 5 minutes a week and you made enough money to pay the bills, are you going to kick up your feet for the other 23 and a half hours a day because you made all the money? Of course not. That would be ridiculous. And you're there to help. So if you work 8 or 10 or 12 hours a day and your stay at home partner also put in that work, whether it was at work while the kids were in daycare or they stayed home, they didn't make money, but they worked for that 8 or 10 or 12 hours. When stuff needs to be done in hour 13, 14, 15, 16, why are they on the hook? Like, why do you get to come home and say, hey, I hear you asking for help, but it either doesn't matter to me or you're crazy? Like, just don't feel like that. You're crazy. Neither of those two options are acceptable in my mind if you love somebody.
This is why I call you John the Good Guy. And this is why the first time in the history of me being alive, I am watching a man on TikTok. Because usually I scroll past the men because I've heard their voices my whole life. And I just can't get enough of what you're saying. The way you explain it just makes so much sense. So for me, I'm just thinking of all of the women and all of the families and households that I've seen role modeled in my life. I was born in 1974, so I'm about to turn 51 here in August. And I'm an older generation. I saw things before women even had rights. So like my grandma was just a traditional wife. And I would sit and watch her wait the table at dinner time. Like my granddad was a college professor, beautiful man. I love him. Like this was just the system that he was part of. He wasn't trying to be a jerk, but he wasn't really helping in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. And he would just sit at the table, and if somebody forgot the salt and pepper, my grandma would hop up and she'd go get the salt and pepper. And if she got tired of going back and forth, then it was my job. Like, hi, Jenny, you're a girl. You're sitting here with all of your brothers and all of these men. And it was then my job to get up and get the extra butter or refill the gravy or whatever needed to be done. And I watched my grandma do 100% of all of the housework and 100% of all of the child rearing, except for maybe a little bit of discipline and some fun times like taking the boys out to throw a football or something. And that was just my normal. And then, of course, like I said earlier, we had this big women's liberation movement in my mom's generation in the 70s and 60s. And women got rights. The year that I was born, women got credit cards and bank accounts for the first time.
All
They
right.
got
Good year.
jobs. Yeah, a really good year. But isn't that crazy to think about that when I was born, like women didn't have bank accounts. A woman
Yeah.
couldn't go to the bank. A woman couldn't go to business. Their jobs, their money would have gone to their husbands. They couldn't have abortions. They didn't have bodily rights. And so then this women's lib movement happens and we get all that. We get the bank accounts, we get the jobs, we get the abortions, we get all this stuff. And we're free. But because the men weren't on board with that, nothing changed. And so then, like, my mom worked a part-time job, but then she also did, guess what? All of the housework, all the childcare, all of the other things. So it's like we've won the battle, but we've lost the war. Because without the feminist men like you coming home to their own houses and then going out into their places of work and looking at how can this be more egalitarian and everything, without the men being on board with this and also changing and growing and moving with us, then we're all alone. And we women, we woke feminist cat ladies, are fighting a system that's much bigger than us, and we can never change anything. So my life, I got married in 1995, looked exactly like my grandma's life. It
Mhm.
looked exactly like my mom's life. It looked very similar to my great grandma's life, except without the farm. And, we had electricity and I didn't have a backyard garden, but we haven't really changed. And I think that until we change our homes, until we change our relationships and how we as individuals operate male to female, nothing changes. And this is one of those things where I think that we fall into this trap of sitting back and saying something does have to change. And we're waiting for the president to change it. We're waiting for somebody out there to do it. But until they do, we're not going to come home and look around like you have and say,
Yep.
well, how can I actually change this?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I get what you mean by some of the battles have been won, but either the war's still ongoing or it seems like it's a losing battle sometimes overall. I do think it starts like individual by individual, right? Which is part of why when I get on live and somebody's like, "This is a waste of your time. Why are you talking to 100 people anyway?" It's like, okay, that's 100 people that might go home and do this a little bit better, right? Or like 50 stay-at-home people who feel validated, right? Who are often, they happen to be women. They feel validated. They ask for advice on how to talk to their husbands. Their husbands come in and affirm. And then there is that small but very vocal fraction of individuals who are probably going out there and getting this wrong. And my fear, like the thing I'm trying to help little pairs of people get better by doing this, is by the time that they're serious and they have kids, have they at least talked about this? Like, have they at least talked and aligned on views? That way, neither of the two of them or their children are worse off because like they're not even willing to have an adult conversation, let alone come to a compromise on this. And I really do believe that most relationships, if not all, would work better if you guys just both were people that didn't do things because of what was, between your legs. You just did things because you loved each other and it needed to be done. So to your point, like, yeah, I come home and I try to make a difference. I know it seems small, but I try to do what I do that way my daughter, who's 5 now, like she knows that this is normal, right? Like you don't need a man that just has bigger muscles than I with like a wider smile and twice the salary who doesn't help. Instead, it's like I'm present and I participate because I don't want to be an absent father with a paycheck. Like I don't want my 18-year-old to grow up and think that it's normal for the father to be absent but the bills to be paid. And I certainly don't want my partner, right, my wife, to think that either. And then I try to spread that person by person on my lives.
I think that that's a really good point too, that the absent but providing the paycheck. I don't know where that became the standard that men don't need to bond with children. And so as a mom, like I hear so many stay-at-home moms, and this was me in my own community as little Mormon trad wifey for so many years. Like, I don't want to go get a job. I want to be in the home because I don't want to miss those moments. I don't want to miss his first step. I don't want to miss his first bite of real food. Like, I
Yep.
don't want to miss those developmental milestones. But we are perfectly fine with men being out there in the workforce and not seeing any of those things. And to me, men are as much a victim of our late stage capitalistic patriarchal system as the women. And we've been exploiting them for so long that they just don't realize that they're missing that too. And there is absolutely no science that says that a child bonds more to the woman than to the father.
Yeah.
Yes, we grow in our belly, we're exchanging some DNA, they recognize our smell and our voice, but they will also recognize their father's voice. And after a baby's born, if the dad is, let's say they have some paternity leave and they are spending time skin on skin, feeding that baby, changing the diapers, humans have the capacity to imprint on fathers, on grandparents, on the entire tribe. In fact, like that is what has kept us going as an interconnected species for how many 3 million years we think so far that our species has existed, is that capacity for the young to bond to the tribe. And
Yeah.
I think it's a crime that the dads aren't having that bonding time, that the children don't have that opportunity to be with dad. And of course, there's so many dads that are missing. And in that case, like my kids have a stepdad. My kids have some of my male friends, and they had uncles and other people that stepped into those roles, coaches, because we do need that male bonding just as much as mom. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I certainly don't know of any science that says, right, that like everything turns out better when the woman's home 24/7 and the man's gone. I don't know of anything like that. At least my personal experience doesn't suggest that. I don't know how we got here necessarily, but I do think now that some of those, again, like people can say I'm insulting. I'm just stating what I think is the truth. But some of those men who aren't thinking critically about this or cannot, I hope that they're just choosing to not think critically, that it does come from a place of like survival instinct, which I guess translates to like laziness. And then they use this myth that's been perpetuated or this message that's been taught to them of like, hey, you're a big strong man, your job is to protect and provide. And then for some of them, what that turns into is making the money, coming home, saying, I'm too tired to keep putting in the effort that will make today, right now, seem hard. So I need to go relax. Like I need to go shower. I need to go crack open that beer and hop on the phone with my friend or play Call of Duty or whatever. And everyone deserves some amount of relaxation time. But again, when there's 3 or 4 hours of stuff to do, it shouldn't always be the stay at home person's job, again, because of what they were born with and the fact that there's a child involved. So I unfortunately think, regardless of how we got here, that the current state is that too many men use that where we're at as an excuse for this being normal. And I think that if they just took a breath, if they had some critical conversations with the people that they love, their adult partners and maybe friends around them, then they would realize that some of those short-term sacrifices, like the decision to make dinner that night and clean after you worked, is going to like significantly benefit not only their partner and their child, but themselves. Like they will have better personal outcomes and better family outcomes in the very medium and definitely long term if they put in that extra effort, right? Like nobody has ever said on their deathbed, I wish I played more video games 5 to 9 after work. Right. I don't think that any man who disagrees with me has ever said, I really wish I got more hang time with the bros after my 9 to 5. Instead, even men often say, I wish I had more time with my family. Like I wish I did X, Y, and Z for my wife, for my partner, for my friend, for my kid. They're like not getting it in the moment. And I'm trying to help them get it in the moment.
I want all of my audience to go back and rewind everything that John just said there because I think it's important, and then play it for the men in your life. John, have you heard the word man keeping? It's like beekeeping. Have you ever heard that
No, I
term?
haven't. But you're teaching me all these terms I'm probably going to use the rest of my life. So teach me.
Yeah. Well, I'm teaching all of us, the feminist warriors out here. This is what we use. This is what me and a lot of my other like content creator, my feminist friends, this is what we're all sick of. We're sick of man keeping. They're picture like the beekeeper and she's keeping the hive and she has to make sure that she's managing that. That's how I felt as a wife. I felt like I was man keeping. And when I say mom with benefits, I literally just picked up the role of my ex-husband's mom. I was ironing his shirts in the morning, making sure that he got up and that he had a clean towel and there was shampoo in the shower and all that was taken care of. And then I'd go out and cook his breakfast and all the while looking cute and make cute pajamas and keep myself skinny and hot. And my life was managing his life. I made his doctor's appointments. I made his hair appointments. I made sure that everything was taken care of. He came home to folded socks and a home cooked meal and chickens in the backyard and kids running around and everything was just absolutely perfect. And it wasn't just mothering. It wasn't just managing a home. I would say that the majority of my tasks were man keeping. And we women were sick of man keeping. It's ridiculous. It drains us of everything. And I think that the reason why you were saying, like, you don't know why these men do this, the reason why is that that's how we've done it. And human beings, we are subconscious dominant. So nobody really teaches us how to walk. We kind of have that programming and then we look around at people and we do it. And then we learn how to talk and, hand movements, gestures. It's interesting when you go to foreign countries, like people in India, they have very different gestures and ways of standing and walking and talking than here in America. Because as humans, we kind of have this stuff, but we're picking up these subconscious cues. We're being hypnotized into how to be. And our society has hypnotized young men that they are going to be kept, that their mommies are going to take care of them, that somebody's going to make their bed and drive them to football practice and cook their food. And they're so used to being man kept that then they get to be adults and the girlfriend or the fiance or the wife or whoever, it's just how they've been programmed. And for someone to change, you have to look at that and say, maybe everything that's in my head about how I walk and talk and operate in the world really isn't such a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Man, it kind of brings me down sometimes. But I agree that that's part of the problem, that it's something that they've observed or been taught. And I also think one of the things that is a problem is they see that they're taught that some of these stay-at-home people, oftentimes like stay-at-home wives, stay-at-home moms, then they get into this agreement. Like maybe they do have this conversation, if nothing else, like when there is the first child on the way or children on the way, and they talk about it and they agree, right? Like childcare is expensive. I'm going to stay at home and do the cooking and cleaning. And that's probably a phrase that's thrown out. While I stay home, I will work on the cooking and cleaning because I'm home. And then 6 months deep, a year deep, 2 years deep, it's harder than they expected. Like until you are a stay-at-home parent with those children, you don't understand what you're signing up for if you have not done this before. And then I think, unfortunately, like people don't often know how to come back to the table to renegotiate, right? Like what each of them needs. And unfortunately, some of the men that I'm trying to get through to, they say, hey, we shook hands on this 2 years ago. Like you shook hands on looking pretty every night at 5 p.m. and having dinner done. The only way for this to work is for you to do that because we shook hands on it 2 years ago. And that's one of the things that I try to highlight, that like you're not thinking critically when the adult that you love and supposedly respect is saying, hey, it's been 2 years, things are different, and I couldn't have predicted the future. Like no matter what I was taught as a child, I am here now, struggling now. If you love and respect me, I'm asking for help. And somehow some of these men don't get it. Like they say, hey, I hear you asking for help, but we shook hands on it 2 years ago. So I see your point that it's around them and taught to them, and we're a product of our environment to an extent, and that we do have to change it or be willing to change it when it bubbles up and that conversation comes to the table.
I like how you talked about the renegotiation, and I had no wiggle room for renegotiation in my first marriage. For 24 years, everything was exactly the way that it was. If I ever said that I needed help with something, then he labeled that as nagging and said, stop nagging me
Yeah.
because that's your job. This is my job. And so then I brought those same habits into my next relationship with Kevin because I had been a Mormon trad wifey. So of course I did the same things. And that very word that you use, that renegotiation, that's what I've been working on in my relationship because Kevin and I blended in a time when I was still very traditional. And then I
Mm-hmm.
realized now I'm working and stuff and this is burning me out. So I had to come to him and say, hey, I literally used that phrase. I need to renegotiate some of the terms. And we sat down and, here's what I do. And here's all the housework. You've never cleaned a bathroom since we've been together. And I do all the cooking and shopping. And I can no longer do that. So here's all the jobs that need to be done. I just need you to like grab some of these. And we have been negotiating not the relationship, not our love for one another, not the intimacy or the loyalty or any of that, but we've just been negotiating the nitty gritty of what it takes to take care of life. And I think that it's important for couples to do this at least twice a year. I think at least twice a year, you sit down and say, so I'm the one who's been driving the kids to carpool and I've been doing this, but this isn't working, or I need you to help a little bit more with the shopping or whatever.
Yep.
That renegotiation is important. And it's weird that we treat that marriage license as like, that's it. That's a lifelong contract with no renegotiation available when there's nothing else in life. Like you get a job, you're going to ask for raise, you're going to ask for like more vacation time. We're always renegotiating everything. But that piece of paper, that wife said I do, so she's going to cook all of the food for the rest of her life until she dies.
Yeah, I agree. And sorry if you're hearing the dog in the background. Hopefully that goes away.
Hello, doggy.
Um, yeah, she's cute, but she's big and loud. And I think like I don't know that I have put into practice yet with my wife any kind of like biannual sit down. I think we do it kind of organically, but I think the like a couple questions that seem hard or weird on the surface to ask, but I think are important are a regular do you feel loved? Are you happy? And do you need help? Right. Like I don't think that those are weird things to ask. And any kind of man that comes into my live and it's often men. It doesn't have to be men, but it's often men who come like chest puffed out and say, that's a weird thing. Like if you love somebody, it's going to be obvious and it's just going to work. And like I think that they're so afraid to be vulnerable and sit down and hear from their oftentimes woman partner, actually, yeah, I do need something different, because they're so unwilling to accept that like I am not perfect. I am not perfectly strong. I am not perfectly executing my duties as this partner or man, where they'd rather avoid it and kind of ball it up and throw it under the rug that just keeps getting more piled up until disaster strikes. That they avoid it. But I think it's super important to be vulnerable and willing to have that conversation so that you can address things that need to change. And life changes, so it's going to happen.
I absolutely love that. Okay, I have just a couple of things. We need to wrap up here. By the way, for all of my followers, we are going to have John on for a live stream this week so that you can ask him questions. So stay tuned for that. First, I want to tell you a quick story because everybody like gets you on TikTok interacting with men. So I want to recreate that here. So I want to tell you just a little bit of a something from my ex-husband, and then I want to hear what you would have said, what you would have suggested for him. We were moving. We're in the middle of a big move, packing up the house, and he didn't help with the move at all. He got done with all of his stuff, and I had just survived an ovarian tumor. We had 5 children under the age of 11, and it was a huge house. We were in this massive $1 million home. And I remember being in the kitchen trying to get all of the dishes packed up and in the Rubbermaid boxes and everything. And I started crying, and I said, I need you to help. Just, I can't do this all on my own. The kids can't help. And he said, I've done my stuff. My stuff is packed. This is your stuff. This is dishes. This is the kids' Legos. It's your stuff. And he did not help. So that was the old way of doing things that I think a lot of people are still in. I know that a lot of my friends and a lot of my followers are still in those relationships where it's very much like the kids' stuff is yours, your stuff is yours, and my stuff is mine. What would you say to my assessment if you were there in that kitchen?
Yeah, I mean, if I was being really sassy, I would call him a big baby and say, like, suck it up. Work needs to be done. We're a team, right? Maybe I'd be a little rude. Did you ask why in the moment? I'm curious. Did you say, hey, why aren't you willing to help with the stuff that, you and I would both consider mine?
Well, that's just how everything always was.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
we were 24 years in at that point, and he was very rigid. But a lot of men are. I use him as an example because I think that he is a classic example. And I hear men in your comment section who are exactly the same. And I have friends and like brother-in-laws and stuff who like that's how their household is. His stuff is his stuff and her stuff is her stuff. And she's responsible for the kids because he's running the business and bringing home the paycheck.
Yeah.
He brings home the bacon, she fries it up in a pan.
Yeah. I think what I would try to get to is, and again, I don't know exactly how it played out, but at least the way that I talk to men about this kind of stuff now is I would try to figure out why. And ultimately, like, I can't think of another reason other than I don't want to because effort. Like, I don't want to do that because I'd rather go sit on the couch and watch my football show or play my video game or get an extra hour of sleep that apparently Jenny's not important enough to also get. Right. So my guess is that it boils down to like laziness. And if I asked and they said something like that I equated to laziness and unwillingness to put in the effort for somebody that they love because you are equal, then I would call them out on it, right? Like I have not been a woman before. I have not been in a situation like that with a partner who has said that exactly to me. So I don't know if I would do this if I was you in that position, but certainly if it was me in that position now, I would say it seems like your want to get that extra hour of sleep and be lazy is more important than hearing me and making me feel seen and heard. And I don't know that we're going to make it if every time that I need something, you say that feeling comforted and lazy, like leisure time, is more important than making me feel seen. And if that was your ex-husband, right, that's what happened, right? Over time, that's exactly what happened.
John, that seems like some hard truth for men to hear. Like, are you getting like threats? Are you getting targeted by the men?
No, people come in my line and they say blink twice if you need help, and I'm like, I'm gonna blink twice. It's gonna happen. I'm gonna be online for a while, but I don't need help. This is just like obvious, at least now to me.
Yeah, because the men are thinking that you're being held hostage by your wife when actually you guys are going to have a really happy marriage. Okay, this is a question from a follower. The follower wants to know, what are the steps necessary to move forward and have a more egalitarian society as opposed to the patriarchy? And of course, this can be on a macro level of how do we move forward as a society to have patriarchy and more egalitarianism, but also just within our own homes, within our individual relationships and communities. What are some of those steps that you see necessary? How do we make this happen?
I'll say one thing about high level, but then I'm going to speak about like small, kind of on the ground level, like relationships and how we can make a difference. On a high level, if there's any kind of laws out there that still say men or women can or can't do something simply because they're a man or woman, that's got to go away. Right. Like I don't know every single law out there. Like I'm in America, so I don't know every law out there that says something about a woman can or can't do something, but that needs to go away. And certainly I don't mind saying it for anyone that's wondering, like I think abortion should be totally fine. I'm not saying like it should just be willy-nilly and like a party, But if it's going to damage the woman's life or threaten her health and safety, like, she is here. She needs to be taken care of. If that is her choice, that is her choice to make. So any kind of law like that, my opinion is, if it's going to put that person down from having self or bodily autonomy, that needs to go away. And we could talk about that if you agree or disagree. I'd say on the
I
ground
agree
level,
100%. It's the access for me. Women need
yeah,
to have
exactly.
access.
Yeah, exactly. And then on the ground level, I think this is unfortunately still, even in 2025, one of those things where, whether you're talking about like one relationship or kind of more on a macro level, a lot of relationships, it might be one of those things where it's going to get harder before it gets easier, right? It's going to get worse before it gets better. Because I think one of the things that like men and women need to do, and I know I'm asking for women to do something when they're often the ones on the tail end of this deal, is we need to like somehow get to the point where we can sit down at that table and say, hey, I don't want to yell, I don't want to scream, but like I don't feel loved, I don't feel happy, and or I need something from you. Like, you are still my man, you are still amazing. I know we can do this. I know that we can both grow through this, but I do need to talk to you about one of these three things or multiple of them not working out. And I do think that's going to lead to some endings, right? Like, it's definitely going to, and that's part of the this is going to get harder before it gets easier thing. But I think it's the only way that we'll be able to have the men and or the women, and especially the men, grow through this. And if everybody gets this on their little individual relationship level over however many years it takes, I think that that does eventually bleed up to the top in terms of things like careers, politics, that sort of stuff.
I think it starts at home. I think that we put too much emphasis on the people at the top when
Yep.
we have all the power. Like, it starts in the home. I love that you have a formula for that. And I think that if I had had that formula, if I could have sat down even with my ex-husband and had that conversation and just had that verbiage, I think that I could have been so empowered for change. And then, yeah, I would have known if he was like, no, hello, well, okay, then we're not going to work out because I need a little bit of help. I will say, from the women's perspective, as Kevin and I have renegotiated, as I try to step out of very structured gender roles into a more egalitarian relational system, then it's been really uncomfortable for me. And I would say that I have more discomfort from it than he does, because all of my value was on those things that I was doing as a woman. Like, I only saw myself as valuable when I was pretty and thin and had all my makeup on at the end of the day. I only see myself as valuable when he comes home from work and dinner is cooked. And this is my worth. My worth is sitting on this plate right here. My worth is the fact that your laundry is folded and that I take care of the kids. And when I let go of some of those tasks and now he's doing it for me, then it's been very unsettling for me to even like grapple with, now, why is Kevin even going to love me? If I'm not cooking his breakfast, lunch, and dinner and doing all his laundry and running the errands, am I worthy of love? And I just want my viewers out there to know that as you step into a more egalitarian system within your home, that may really push on your sense of worth, because we as women, we were programmed subconsciously that all of our value comes from taking care of other people. And it's been really hard. So it's just as hard for the men to step up and not be lazy and take care of some of the things at home as it is for the women to let go of that. I'm like, why is he even going to love me anymore? So
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting psychology. I actually work with my therapist on this. I can't tell you how many times, John, I've sat on my therapist's couch. I'm like, but if I am not cooking the whole Sunday feast that I used to cook, then why would Kevin love me? Why wouldn't he just find another woman who's going to do that for? And spoiler alert, like, Kevin loves me even more because now I'm engaged in things that are more purposeful and that light me up. And I'm happy, and our relationship is solid in part because we are both supporting one another. I'm not man keeping.
Yep.
We are supporting one another.
I love that. I love basically everything that you said. I think, people, part of the reason I talk about it and I keep saying, like, try to get this to more young people, especially young men, is because I think that sometimes relationships don't make it to the point where they can't fix this, right? They end. Or to your point about some people might have this fear, like maybe you did, about, what if I stop doing this thing that I don't want to do anymore? Like, is that my worth to my partner and my love for my partner, is it going away? I do think it becomes harder and harder the longer it goes on, right? Like, if an 80-year-old has had dinner cooked for them every single night at 5 p.m. for the last 50 years, it's a lot harder for them to have that renegotiation than at 22 or 23. And that's why I'm trying to empower both men and women to say, like, I know it's tough, but like, we got to get brave while we're in year 1 or 2 of the relationship or the parentship or whatever, while we're young, to try and have these tough conversations. Because, I mean, they're tough, but they lead to being able to continue loving that person that you love rather than loving them as a wallet or as a maid, right? Those are not good options.
No more transaction ships. We have to
Yep.
step into relationships.
Yep.
And this is where it starts. So if you're in that relationship right now and it's not working, have the conversation today, is what you're saying. Don't wait until you're 80. Okay, 2 more questions for you. What are you hoping to do out there?
I would like to make as big of a difference to as many people as possible. If we're talking about this sort of stuff, the most exciting thing so far, and I know it's maybe a pipe dream, maybe it sounds like I'm talking on my butt or something, but 2 men in the first week of me doing the TikTok lives, which I've only been doing for 3 weeks, believe it or not, but 2 men in the first week separately, 2 different lives, they came in and they disagreed. And by the end of the conversation, they had budged at least a little bit. And not like, oh, I get it. Thanks. Here's a follow. But I'll use one as an example. He came in and he said his last, I think it was 3 relationships or something. It was like the women didn't appreciate him and they didn't do anything. And like all women are like that, right? It was something basic like that. We use that as the high level frame. By the end of the conversation, I got him to like admit or realize one of 2 things. Maybe he got unlucky. Like there's 4 billion women out there. Not all women have this figured out. So maybe he had a couple bad situations in a row. He should not apply that to 3.9999 billion other women, right? That's not fair. And it wouldn't be fair for him either, right? If one man did something bad. But the other thing that he was willing to accept as reality is maybe he was the problem, right? If all 3 women were telling him the same thing, he needed to go back and at least make an earnest effort to reevaluate some of what he was doing because he was the commonality. There's definitely a chance that he's got some stuff to work on as a man to be a better partner. And that sort of thing that I could make him say, hey, this guy's spitting facts. I'm actually going to go think about that. And then he logged off. It was almost scripted. It was like I paid one of my friends to come on the live. So if I could do more of that's what I'm trying to do with this.
So what I hear you saying is that you are trying to raise some awareness and make people look at things that they have never had to look at.
Yeah, exactly.
Just look at it and go back and think about it. And maybe there's room for change.
Yep.
I love that. And I truly love your life. So anybody who's listening to us, please we're going to have John's TikTok link in the description and just follow him over there, catch one of his lives, share it with your boyfriend, share it with your sons, share it with your brothers, your husband, whoever, like your girlfriend's husbands that aren't doing the thing. Share it with all those men because you make me think and you totally give me hope. Okay, the last question I have for you, and thank you so much. This conversation has made me think so much. And like I say, like just given me so much hope that all of this work that we women are doing to carve out space for ourselves to enjoy life in the way that men have enjoyed it, you give me hope that we have some male allies who are also trying to do that work, and that there's good guys out there. So my final question, you ask in a TikTok, what have you done today to make your life and the life of your family better? So I want to ask you, John, what have you done today to make your life and the life of your wife and child a little better?
We're up in Wisconsin for my current job. And after a certain point, if you're doing well enough, you're able to work from home. There is like a pay cut that comes with it. And for the longest time, it was like, what is all the crazy stuff we can do so that I can retire 10 or 20 or 30 years earlier? And it wasn't just a selfish thing. Like we both had at the time agreed that it would be for the betterment of the family. But things changed, right? And like we didn't know what we were signing up for 5 years ago when our daughter was born. So we renegotiated and we came to the table and said, whether or not it means having to get a new job, we're going to move back to family. Like we are going to leave Wisconsin and we are going to move us and our 5-year-old back to at least one of our families. That journey has led us to actually last week is when I got here. I had the week off for vacation, but I now work for the same company, took a pay cut. Like worst case scenario, I'll work a pretty cozy job till I'm 65, which is fine because me and my family are happy. And today is day 2 of my work from home version of this job. So while executing all my duties and all my responsibilities, I got my daughter chocolate milk. My wife was able to go out and use our new paddleboard on the beach, right? Like she felt special and taken care of. Like she didn't just have to stay cooped up in the 4 walls all day with our small daughter. And I'll be able to make dinner tonight. Like I have a late meeting, but it is no problem for me to make dinner because I have a busy day because there's no drive home. So I know not everyone is that fortunate or has the same exact situation, but I gave up a lot of opportunity and guarantee that I would be able to retire more wealthy and much younger so that we could have a day-to-day situation like this, where my daughter says, hey, I saw daddy today. Like he didn't walk through the door and put me to bed, but he came and hung out with me for an hour while he listened to a call and he made dinner for me and mommy after she got home from the beach. And that's the type of little thing that I'm trying to do every day.
Thank you so much for your answer. And I just want to say, like, there's so much beauty in just what you shared. And I think that one of the things that you're exemplifying is there are ways in which men can show up for their partners, for their wives, their girlfriends, and for their children. That's not just the pocketbook. That's not just throwing the money at us.
Yep.
And yes, we do feel loved when we have beautiful homes to live in and when you're a supportive financial partner. But I think that that should be just one aspect of what all of us bring to the table. We can't just throw money at things. So that's really beautiful. I love the ways in which just in one little day in your life, you were showing up for your family in non-monetized ways. And I think that that's one of the most tragic things that we have lost is just that connection without monetization. Our tribes have been stolen and hijacked, and so now everything just has a dollar amount on it. And unfortunately, often that's happening within just the walls of our home too. So
Yep.
it's really beautiful. I love it. I think that you paint a picture of goals. Anything else you'd like to add before we sign off? This has been such a great discussion. I'm going to rewatch this myself multiple times while I'm editing, and I'm really excited to just relearn from you because I think that you have so much wisdom to offer. So anything else?
No, I mean, I want to say I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate you reaching out. Certainly to any of the viewers that feel like maybe they have struggled through this. I mean, I want you to feel validated. Like this is a unfortunately common thing, but definitely something that is important and can be dealt with. And then most importantly, if you are actively dealing with this, I feel for you, right? I have not always gotten this perfect. My wife has not always gotten this perfect. Obviously, like past relationships that I've been in, we have not gotten this perfect. But I think as a reminder, like you are worth it, right? Like going through the hard conversations to make the difference. And if you love your partner and you're still together currently, so are they, right? So no matter how scary it is, I just want to reiterate to people, it's important to have this conversation now before you look back at 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 and say, man, I really wish I would have done that 10, 20, 30 years ago. I hope everyone has fantastic life, and I'm happy to engage with you more, Jenny, and see if your viewers want to come into my life.
Thanks. Okay, well, we'll be going live and I'll put up the announcement about that. So make sure that you are subscribed to me so you get those announcements up live. John and I will spend about 60 minutes with him answering your questions and sharing some of his other ideas. And again, I'll put a link in the description so that you can follow John over on his TikTok. I find what you're doing over there absolutely amazing and stunning. So thank you. Thank you for your time and have a great day.
Thanks.